tell everybody, because nobody knows what you did in your real life outside of bridge before bridge.
Well, of course, I was married with several children, and I was occupied with the Hamilton Manufacturing Company, which was a company I started in with my father, who became ill, and he passed away early. And we just went through the struggle of building a company over a long period of time, and finally my brother joined me, and we did fine. And that was a paper converting business, which didn't do any business in Richmond. We were all shipping by carloads and truckloads outside of the city. It's not a very well-known business. It's kind of a specialty, and we owned it for 30 or 40 years. And
You were also a tennis player, weren't you?
yes, I played a lot of tennis. I did a lot of sailing. I did a lot of flying.
Where'd you find time to play bridge?
Well, I don't know. That's a hard thing. My wife was extremely cooperative.
She wasn't a bridge player.
What I did, no, she never played bridge. Thank goodness for that. I didn't have to. She provided a means for me to have the time by taking care of things at home.
The Bridge Center didn't get started officially until 1961, but I know there were games in town before then.
Well, yes, all of the games belonged to those who taught. There was Mary and Dick Payne. Mary was the teacher. Dick was the editor of the Time-Dispatch.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he was. He was the city editor, and he helped her, and they ran the games. He produced a column in the paper every day of the hands that you could see that Scheinwald eventually was syndicated. But Dick Payne wrote all those hands.
Wrote Scheinwald's column?
The same column that Scheinwald eventually syndicated, Dick Payne ran earlier than Scheinwald did.
Wow.
In Richmond. He had that faith. But Mary was the teacher, and they would teach wherever they could find a place for us to go, which was not very suitable. We played first at Wingfield Parrish's home on Parkway, that Parkway, I can't think of it now, over there off of Patterson, West Ham Parkway.
West Ham Parkway.
In his home in the sun parlor and his living room, he put up tables, and he ran a game there. But there was no place to park there either. You had to park way up the street. Wasn't very satisfactory. Then Virginia Brown was probably the principal teacher who taught all the time. That was her living. And her husband assisted her. She had a game at the Hot Shop when it was downtown on 7th.
On the cafeteria.
Cafeteria, that's right. We would go and eat there and then go play. That was the nature of that room.
Would they play upstairs?
Upstairs on the second floor. They had a place upstairs overlooking the diner.
I remember that. Mimi and I, when I was in law school, when we had enough money to eat hot shop.
You might have gone over there from time to time.
We've been in that hot shop.
So those games belonged to those people. There were other teachers of not quite the same stature who ran games in other places, like Salisbury Country Club or the Willow Oaks. They would run 2 a month or something like that. They would teach at the same time. There were a number of people who did things like that. Ben did that.
Well, Mary Payne produced that wonderful set of books, Bridge the Painful Way.
The Painful Way.
Mimi took lessons from
Mary Payne they were a delightful couple. We played all of our team games in Richmond in our homes. So the games were set up. We never had a place to go to play. And that was a problem with not having the Bridge Center. And when I became president of the Bridge League, I could perceive the idea that the Bridge League itself, having several hundred members, could, by putting the games together, having Mary have a night at a game, and Virginia having a night and a game that they consider their own, because that's where people were playing at that time, that we could actually afford it. If we built a building that was stable, could be resold, no real risk any more than any real estate building that you can buy or build. That was not, I didn't perceive that as being a risk, but they wouldn't do it. They just didn't seem to be able, even with all the people we had paying dues and paying for the games, we could have financed that over a longer period of time. And maybe we just had 30 or 40 years. It didn't make any difference. We wanted a place to play. So that's when they wouldn't do it. I asked Calvin Kibler and Dick and Mary Payne, Joe and Jimmy Roddelback. He was not here at the time, but he came shortly after that.
He was in the military.
Yeah. And P.T. Hastings.
The seafood.
Yeah, seafood, the mother, P.T. And her husband was passed away, and she wanted to be a partner.
She was Blanche.
Blanche Hastings.
Blanche Hastings.
And then there was Jack Darien.
Yep.
And he wanted to be a partner. And, I can't remember who else now.
There was a gentleman, of course, Russell and Nadine Griffin.
Oh, Russell and Nadine, of course.
And there was a gentleman who I saw in some of the old business records when the company started, who I never knew, whose last name was Clark.
Oh, Hal Clark.
Hal Clark.
Hal and Charlotte Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do that? I don't remember that they did that.
Hal Clark was one of the original members of the Bridge Center. Apparently he put in some share of the money to get it started, but his name was in the first set of documents, which I have here, but I never saw it again in any of the documents a year or two later.
He didn't do it. He was interested, but they decided in the end, I think, not to do it. We all put up $10,000.
Okay.
Because we didn't feel like we could take on the debt severally. No one wanted to take total responsibility because you couldn't do that with a bank unless you promised jointly and severally to pay the bill. And who would be left to pay it if somebody didn't pay it? So we just put up the $10,000 and built the building for, I think, around 100.
Well, the original mortgage on the building was $27,500, I believe.
Well, we put up about 80 and 90. There was 9 of us, wasn't
Okay,
it?
yeah.
Oh, 8. I think it was 8.
8.
We put up $80,000 and took a mortgage for it.
So which year was this?
The group got together, as I could tell from the records, in 1960.
Okay.
And towards the end of 1960.
See, I was president the year before.
Right.
Right.
And towards the end of 1960, they started to put it together, and put the concept together, had some meetings. I saw some old records where T. Kibler, Calvin's wife, was the temporary secretary.
That's right.
And she took the minutes of the first meeting where everybody sort of agreed.
O.J. Graham.
O.J. Graham was going to do the legal work.
Hal and Charlotte did not participate.
Okay.
They might have been interested, but they didn't go.
Okay. He was at the first meeting, but I don't see where he ever owned stock.
No, he did. He talked about it, but they never did it.
And then when they went to the bank, apparently the bank required that the stock certificates that each of them owned be pledged as collateral for the loan.
Okay.
And so here were Blanche was actually must have been president for some time, and she attested. Oh, she must have been secretary, because she attested the handing out of the original stock certificates, and O.J. witnessed it. O.J. Graham witnessed it. Govan wouldn't have known O.J. because O.J. died long before Govan became, or most of the people who were here. But O.J. was a really interesting character.
He was that.
He was an attorney. He was the slowest bridge player.
Absolutely. He had to, cards, please. You had to turn your card back over every single time
Yep.
he played.
Yep. And actually, Dickie, who's been sometimes criticized for being slow, was a speed demon compared to O.J.
Oh, man, played a lot faster than O.J.
O.J. did the legal work for the company.
Well, we didn't have the same rules then.
Right.
People were studying, bridge and a learning bridge. We didn't have a cadre of advanced bridge players in those days. We had probably, I would say, 15 or 20 guys who really understood the game or were getting to understand it. Ed Hollow and Jones and Preston Ellett.
Preston Ellett.
And one other guy, they played as a team a lot. Peggy played with them.
Yep.
It depends on the time, what the time was, whether it was between wives. He had lost his wives. He lost 2 lives. They died. That's it.
This was the original rendering of what the Bridge Center was going to come to look like.
You see, when we played with at the hot shop, there was no place to park down there either. You had to park in the parking lot. That increased the price considerably relative to what we were paying.
That's right, because parking back down there was 20 cents for a first half hour.
Well, but see that you can't relate money.
I know.
You have to relate the same way you relate it today. It hasn't changed much that way.
I remember that.
So people didn't really want to do it. There was a problem. They had to get out and all that kind of thing. And Mary and Dick Payne finally rented a place near the Jefferson Hotel, which is totally unsatisfactory. So they're the factors that drove us into having a place to play.
I have it here, the minutes of the meeting of December 10th, 1960, where you were appointed president.
Yeah, chairman is what they said.
That's
Chairman
right.
of the board of the Bridge Center is what they said.
Yep. And this was their figuring. If they could borrow $28,500, they could make it by having 3 games a week, and they figured that they would be able to bring in $625 a week with 3 games.
Mhm.
The original fee for playing here was $1.25.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I got here in '64, it was still $1.25. And then when the sales tax came in, they thought that we were going to have to pay sales tax, so they raised it to $1.30. But then they found out we wouldn't have to pay sales tax, so they raised it to $1.50.
I encourage you, every time we ever talked about this issue, to raise the price a little.
Right.
It was too cheap.
And it's always been too cheap. I mean, this has never been a profit-making organization.
But you got so that it's paid off and everything.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You got that to,
Yeah.
Whatever it's worth when you die.
When Mimi and I joined in 1967, the building had long since been paid for.
Yes, yes.
And 69, I'm sorry, 1979, the building had been completely paid for. If the building hadn't been paid for, there's no way this place could ever make any money.
No, but they had gotten their money back. Everybody got their money back.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and we've kept Ridge going for a very long time just because of that. But this was the original meeting. It talked about getting the building appraised, about having you as the president. O.J. Graham is to set up the corporation legally,
Yeah.
and I'll have to show you the documents in a minute where he did that. Calvin was to take the builder to different builders to the site to get 3 different bids, and Dickie was going to handle all of our banking needs when the time came, and that was in the original minutes.
That's right.
At that time, you're right, Mr. Clark never received stock certificates. The
No.
original stockholders were, this has always been very interesting to me, and I was going to ask you about this. The original stockholders were Dick Payne, Richard W. Payne Jr., Russell H. Griffin, Jack Garion, Richmond H. Hamilton, Blanche Hastings, H. Calvin Kibler, James V. Rattleback, that was Colonel Rattleback, Oakley J. Graham Jr., and Richard Payne. Oh, and the Paynes had 2 sets of certificates for some reason or another. The only woman in the group was Blanche Hastings.
That's right.
Now,
We couldn't find anybody.
but none of the women were stockholders. Just the husbands were stockholders.
Well, Blanche must have been.
Blanche was. She
Oh,
was the
yeah.
only woman stockholder.
Well, I think that's history.
That's history.
The way
that-
people related in those days.
That's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
And, but the face of the Bridge Center was Mary Payne, who ran the Thursday night game and gave lessons.
Yes?
Joe Rattleback around the Saturday game.
That Virginia Brown wouldn't come.
Right, Virginia Brown, I never knew her.
No, but here's the thing. We knew, and I explained to her very carefully, to her and Kilby, who went around with her all the time. He was a insurance salesman, but I don't know whether he sold much insurance. But he helped her every time. She didn't want to give up her independence of game, but we knew that once we established a place to come to in the West End, and the parking, and the fact that other people came here, and everybody played each other here, that every game was going to end up being a Bridge Center game. History would bring that into pass. It's just a question of practice.
Mhm.
And finally, she gave it up.
I understand from, I think maybe talking to you in the past, that she was very angry with you all for setting this up and taking away from her teaching.
She had a personal interest, and we understood that, but our interest, the interest of Bridge in Richmond, was not being served. There was no place to go, no place to play. Dick and Mary didn't like the place down on the Jefferson Street. It was a horrible place. It was too hot or too cold, no place to park down there except in streets that no one wanted to park their car and walk to play bridge. So, and Wingfield Parish got old and couldn't do it anymore, and everybody needed a place to play. If the Bridge League was going to survive, it needed to have a place that was safe and where all the bridge players met other bridge players and could play.
When we got here, they had the winners of each game on a list on the board.
Mhm.
Every week, on a big board up front,
They went in the paper.
and it went into the paper.
Dick Payne saw that they got in the paper.
That's how we got it into the paper. I always wondered about that, and it
That's
stayed
right.
in the paper for many, many years.
That's exactly right.
And remind me, Dick Payne's relationship with the paper was
He
what?
he ran the newspaper. He ran the.
No, he was a city editor.
City editor of the Richmond Times.
He
and
might have
Star.
been the assistant or something, but nevertheless, he had a good job in the newspaper.
And he ran his own bridge column. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yes, he did.
When we got here,
Richmond is still a small town.
that's correct, and it was really a small town back then.
Right, okay, and even more so then, right? And
Yeah.
towns of this size don't have bridge centers of their own.
Well, we were earlier than many cities in the country.
Okay,
That became, when bridge grew, when the population grew, and there were more bridge players to pay the freight, it became easy for them to manage it, and they had history in front of them.
yeah.
They had a precedent. All they had to do was just do it. The bridge players would come.
But at the time that you were doing this, you're saying that might have been ahead of the curve then a little
Well, it
bit.
was very much ahead of the curve. That's why we had to put up the $10,000. We couldn't borrow any money on the prospect of the business because the business was not large enough.
Right.
We understood that, but history would change that.
Yeah, how could you go to a bank and say to a bank, we want to start a bridge club and we need $28,000 to do it?
And oh, by the way, no other town our size has one.
That's correct.
The reason we could borrow the $28,000 because we paid $80,000
Right.
into the building.
But you had a pretty good business plan in that first set of meetings. So when we got here, the Tuesday night game was the parish pairs. I never been any of the parishes.
You know, because he was an old man when I started playing. They'd been playing in the 30s. There were very few people playing. They said that Colonel, I know his name. I think it was Cochran, but I can't swear to that. I can't remember exactly. He was a person who kept bridge together. But the others were following Coplin then, in the 30s. Coplin was the voice of bridge in the 30s. He's the one who wrote the book.
Yep.
Join didn't write a book until 20 years after.
Did the parishes play bridge here, or were they gone by the
No,
time
they
got
never
here?
played here.
So that putting
Springfield was
putting the
too old.
parish pairs up there was just in their memory.
See, that's what we understood was going to happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
What were we going to do?
I understand.
It was unusual. I think the Harlows would have, but it didn't show any leadership tendency of
Could
that.
you imagine Ed Harlow directing a game?
No, he wouldn't do that.
So there's some inside baseball going on. What is
Ed-
about Ed Harlow
Ed-
that I
Ed-
don't
Ed
know?
and Jane Harlow
Yeah.
were a couple of characters.
Okay.
They were here when I got here. Ed thought he was the world's best bridge player.
Yes, he did.
He wasn't.
No, but he was a good
He was a
player
good
for
player.
Richmond.
And his wife Jane was just a lovely, lovely woman. Always dressed up to come to the bridge
Jane
set.
Bayless.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. Ed, I think you might remember that. I think you might have known this story. He picked on her mercilessly. I mean, all the time.
At the bridge table.
At the bridge table. And one day she said to him, Ed, you've got to stop. I don't want to play if you want to continue to complain about everything that I do. And he said, as long as I'm paying for this, I can say anything that I want. So she said, I'm going to start paying for this. And for the next week or two, she paid, and every time he started to say something, she said, I paid for the game. And about the third week of this, Ed said, I can't stand it anymore.
I never knew where Ed learned to play bridge. His first wife, Elizabeth, played bridge. They played together. When we went to play team games, we went to their home and we played. And Ed was a substantial person in those days. He had a good job at American Tobacco, you know. And he rose to be vice president.
Of American Tobacco?
Of quality control. He was a chemist.
Okay.
And he was good, and he was a nice man actually, and a very straightforward man. I got along fine with him, and finally he had his friendship with these guys that they played. I don't know who the fourth was, Jones and Ellett and.
Oh,
somebody
Wallace
else.
Jones.
Huh?
Wallace Jones?
Wallace Jones.
I didn't know him. I met him a couple of times when I played, but I think he passed away very early on, or at least became too infirm to play
They
bridge.
were among the best bridge players we had. They would win most of the team games. Everybody else was coming along.
Like I say, he wasn't here very long after we started. When did
They
he?
played a lot with Nancy White and some others.
Nancy was my next door neighbor when we lived out in
You
the
knew Dick,
townhouse.
of course. Or do you know who he was? Dick White.
Dick White, yep, yep, Dick White.
Where did you learn how to play bridge, or how did you learn how to play bridge?
My mother and father played bridge, but never taught me. My father was an able man, and we were never short of anything. But he never paid a lot of attention. I mean, he had his own life. He divorced my mother later, and that separated us a lot. But I think that I watched them play and became interested in that. And when I was in the Navy, I was stationed at Barron Field, which is a outlying field from Pensacola. They have 5 or 6 outlying fields that have specialty flying lessons of various, sometimes instruments, sometimes gunnery, sometimes navigation, sometimes this, that, you know. And there was nothing to do. I got through everything early, and it was not, the program was built for people like me. They had to make it so people could get through it. They can't have geniuses because they're getting enough pilots.
Yep.
So it was perfect for me. And I'd already been a pilot anyway. My father was interested in aviation. He actually ran the company that ran Bird Airport, but he ran it on the side. That was not his business. He did that because David Stewart Bryan and Ivor Massey, their names you ought to know. Did you know Ivor Massey?
Yeah.
Well, you know the
Massey
museum.
Cancer.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's Ivor Massey. He was a captain in the Air Force under Eddie Rickenbacker's hat-in-ring squadron in World War I. And he was interested in aviation. He eventually, when the war came, these are side issues, you know, there's never any end to side issues. When he came home, he wanted to continue flying. Bird field was just a dirt field. And the only thing came in there later was Eddie Rickenbacker's tri-motors that took passengers. That was the first Eastern Airlines aircraft. The C-47 types came later. John Stuart Bryan was the son of Stuart Bryan, who owned a newspaper.
Okay.
The media journal.
Okay.
Fell to them. So they got together with my father and said, Otto, would you please, if we set up the company and finance it, would you handle it? Would you do everything? He said, yeah, I'll take care of it. He was interested in aviation. And so that gave my brother, who became a TWA captain during the war, that gave both of us an opportunity to fly. Mm. And we did fly. So when the war came along and the Navy was ready, that's how I got. And so, but when we got to Pensacola ready to graduate as a pilot, I didn't have anything to do a lot of the time. And I went to the library and looked for books to read. And that was Coplin Gold Book, a little fat book like this, all yellow bound, about that size. I read every page. Mm. And of course, I beat everybody there all the time. The regulars are clocking. I just picked up the money and took it. It was just like taking candy.
Yeah.
That's how I got interested in it. And when the war came over, I began to play with my brother and two neighbors. And finally, a guy came to play with us who played bridge with all these players that were playing when they got together in these schools. I never knew anything about these games. He says, you know what? Will you come and play with me? I said, sure. So he introduced me to the game. He was a good player, but I can't remember his name. Isn't that funny? I remember him just as well as anything, but I can't. I remember I passed him in a two-bid one time, and he said, never do that again. But those are the kind of experiences you have that leads you into interest in something. Yeah. I got interested in bridge then.
Yeah.
So then Catlett came along about the time I was playing at Virginia Browns. He was like 16 years old. Now Catlett was a very unusual card player. Catlett had the same kind of brain for bridge, although he never went very far with it because he never had the opportunity. He was driven by his own economic needs. But he was a very smart guy and he was very innovative. He would play what he called Old Southern. If Catlett bid a spade, and I bid two spades, Catlett bid three hearts with three baby hearts. Didn't mean anything to him at all. He just wanted to know if I could bid anything or not. Or if he bid three diamonds, he didn't have to have anything. Goring never recommended that. That was for the next 15 years,
yeah.
or 20 years. Those kind of bids never came up. Catlett was just natural about it. Mm. He just bid whatever it didn't make any difference. He knew where he was going to end up anyway. It didn't matter about that. He just misdirected the whole game. And he prospered from that.
Now, he was one of the people who thought he was the best.
I prospered from playing with him.
He was one of the people who thought he was the best bridge player that there ever was. Let everybody know he was the best bridge player that there ever was. And he probably was one of the best players that there ever was.
He was the best bridge player. I think actually he was the best bridge player for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think he played any better than some of the guys he played today. But certainly not Mark Dahl and Mark Rosenblum.
And Mark Rosenblum.
They are great players.
Great
Harry
natural players.
Gillis is a first-rate player.
Yep.
So we have them, and you with him and others. We've got a bunch of good players today. But in those days, it was kind of sticky, you know. But we'd have to go to tournaments to be really challenged in the earliest days. But I just followed along. Steve was a pitcher. He said, "Dickie, you're the catcher."
Steve was one of the early presidents of the Richmond Bridge Association, wasn't he?
Hmm?
Steve was one of the early presidents of the Richmond Bridge Association.
I didn't hear you.
I think that Steve was one of the first presidents of the RBA, the Richmond Bridge Association.
I don't know whether he was or not. I do not remember that.
No?
It may be he was. I don't remember that he was.
Because I heard all the stories about how he planned all this and how he bought all the liquor for the RBA meetings.
Well,
and-
he might have liked to do that, but he did like to do all that kind of thing. Because he just liked things, he just did things his way. He
Did
things
everything his way, didn't care about anybody else.
And he had the fortune of playing with the greatest player in the world. He played for 8 years with Soloway.
Right.
He paid
Right.
him.
He paid,
him in those days $25,000 as a retainer.
wow.
Now listen, the $25,000 is a lot of money out there. You're talking
Yeah.
about 25 years
Yeah.
ago. You know. So,
Now, his wife Fletcher is still around. She's one of the few first generation players that's still here.
yes, she is.
And she apparently still plays occasionally at the country club.
I think she does play with some of those ladies out
Mhm.
there. You know.
Um,
I think they consider her a pretty good partner.
One year, when we used to have those games in the home, when they had the citywide tournament,
Yeah.
Harry Gellis and a woman named Ann Murin, who played here for a little while, and Mimi and I played Stephen Fletcher Catlett and Hersh and Peggy Coplin, we'll talk about them in a minute,
That's right.
in the finals of the tournament. And Hersh was the biggest bragger that there ever was, psyched all the time,
Yeah.
was one of the best bridge players that there ever could be. He
He was
didn't
a
have
hell
to
of a
psych to
bridge
play
player.
well. And we had between us a few hundred points, and they were the best. They were probably the four among the four best bridge players in Richmond. And Steve said, we want to have a director there. We want to make sure everything's done proper, keep us in our place. And when we sat down at the table to play in that match, Hersh and Peggy sat down next to us and said, we want to play against you. And I looked at Hersh and said, boy, I was hoping for that. And that set the stage, and we whipped them bad in the finals. I don't think Steve ever forgave us for that. Hersh actually had Mimi and I play in team games with them. He said, we can't beat you, come play with us. Talk about Hersh a little bit. Hersh was a really interesting guy.
Hersh was a unique person. He had difficulties. He had economic difficulties. He ran into trouble, and you know.
Well, he was a gambler.
Huh?
He was a gambler.
Yes, he was. I played with Dick and Mary Payne in a team game in their home against Hersh. Hersh called it the 3 diamonds, and I doubled him, and he redoubled. And the whole hand, we were playing total points in those days, not imps, total points. And Hersh got and redoubled. That's the kind of gambler he was, and he went down one trick. I think it was like 2,200 points, double and redouble. Throw him into the game, and I've forgotten how many, but the team match was over. I said, Hersh, the game's over. I don't care what you bid, because I'm not gonna lose that many points. That Hersh and Peggy would take advantage of the situation, which she understood, which they could not. If he bid a spade and she bid 2 spades, he bid 3 no trump.
Right, because he never wanted her to play a hand.
He didn't have a spade. And he just was so good at playing. And he was a very interesting character. One time, I loaned him money and he couldn't pay it back. I knew when I gave it to him it was low, but I had money that day, so that didn't matter. And then later on, he had the nerve to call me and said, look, I want to exchange checks with you. He'd give me one dated 10 days from now. He said, with money coming in, because Hersh would never pay it.
Right.
He didn't have any money.
Never anybody.
It was a shame because he was a capable person. But he couldn't stay on one line of work, that's all. It's too bad. I enjoyed them. He was tough to play against, though. You had to be very careful.
He psyched, he did all kinds of crazy things.
It was just terrible.
But he was one of the first people in Richmond to play a strong club system.
Yes. But see, Peggy did what he said.
Yeah.
Peggy knew things that nobody else could exactly figure out. and Hersh would straighten it out before it was over. But he was good.
He was good.
He played with Goring when Goring came to Richmond in a regional tournament. I kibitzed the game. In the midst of one of the hands, Hersh threw a substantially high card like the king, or an ace. He threw the don't win him. And Goring looked at him and says, "You didn't need to do that. I know what you've got." And he did know, because the hand had the 2-3 cards had been played.
Yeah.
And Hersh had given him a signal that he had. He says, "What are you doing?"
Hersh could be just plain nasty. Phoebe had been a director for about 2 weeks, and she was running a game that Hersh was playing in. And she came to the table to make a ruling. There was a revote, and Phoebe gave the explanation about what you could play, and he said, "But you didn't give the full explanation." So, and he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You didn't say unless you don't have any of them, and then you don't have to play one."
Yeah. I know.
And then he says, "You know that." He said, "But you're supposed to tell me that." And then he calls me over to the table and he says, "Bob, Mimi's directing this game, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and she doesn't give me the respect that I deserve." And I said, "Hersh, she gives you exactly the amount of respect."
Yeah, that's right. But he was the most unusual and different player that we've ever had.
No question.
So what's a decision that he would make that you think that you would call unusual? Is there something? Is there something is there something useful that he would do?
Yes.
That
He would always bid what he didn't have.
Yeah.
And if Peggy was supposed to help him if she had it, and then he would put the contract where he thought it belonged. I mean, I don't know if they talked about it at home and got it straight, because I don't know that they were that crooked. They had problems with hands. I mean, they didn't win every time by a long way. Peggy just couldn't keep track of it sometimes.
I think that when the ACBL put in the rule about psyching and not psyching more than once in any particular game, I think that was done in a large part in response to Hersh and continued complaints about Hersh psyching on every hand and mixing everything up.
Well, there were no known, understood antidotes to that in those days.
Right.
They didn't have systemic
Right.
conventions that would clarify that issue.
When I started playing, we didn't have windows here.
Oh, really?
The windows in front of the office went into a closet.
Yes, that was a closet.
That was a closet and a little teeny office for the business manager at Bridgestone. So this building was built with no windows that's shown in here. And the lighting wasn't nearly as good back then.
No, of course they couldn't. It didn't happen.
And everybody smoked.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
So
I had to get up and go outside.
you were constantly playing in a haze.
Yeah.
And we wanted to get rid of, some of the newer players wanted to get rid of the smoking, but T. Kibler, who was the wife of one of the owners, was the biggest smoker of them all. And T didn't want to give up smoking. And sooner or later it started chasing players away.
Was there alcohol too, or no alcohol
never
at the
been
table?
alcohol.
No,
Okay.
we never had that problem.
That was one thing that we said at the beginning, no alcohol in the Bridge Center, even on Friday nights. Friday night was dress-up night. Everybody played on Friday night.
Yeah.
All the good players came. Everybody came, and they dressed up, and it was party night.
Yeah.
The game started later. I think they started at 8 o'clock back then.
Yeah.
Ran until about 11, and then I guess people went over. Some of us went over to Piggy's Lounge to talk about the hands and what else was going on, and it was a lot of fun. It was a different attitude and different mood because these people have been playing together for forever. One of the interesting things back then was scoring. That was You didn't play Govan, did you, before the computers came in?
Post.
Okay.
I'm a newbie.
This is how the game was scored.
Scoring is a bit more equitable today, though. Don't you think?
Each board had one of these slips. And when you played the hand, you wrote down your score, what the contract was and what the score was. And so at the end of the game, you put it in what position you played. So at the end of the game, you had all these scores.
Mm-hmm.
And we took the boards, and the people who were capable of doing it would match point the game and put the match points here. And then they were transferred to one of these sheets.
Yep.
So these scores had to be transferred into these columns. And then, and they usually play 27 boards, you added them across, and then when you had the scores, you added them down. And you had the north-south, and you had the east-west. And sometimes we had 13 or 14 tables, so there were a lot of scores. Jack Garian, who was one of the original owners, was probably the fastest adder in the history of bridge. You remember that, Dickie?
He was the fastest adder, the fastest guy that I ever saw that I knew was Dickie Freeman.
And I didn't know him.
Yeah, well, see, he was a whiz kid,
Okay.
and he did the regionals. So they had a great big sheet.
Oh, yeah.
They had 2 or 3 groups.
Right. With 2 or 3 sections.
Sections, yeah. And they would have a contest to see who could do it fastest. And he could just run right across much square, right across much square. But he was a whiz, though. See. But Jack Garian was just fine. He could score. It would take a long time to score.
Oh, yeah. Because you had to match point them.
Yeah.
And in the last round, the director would be pulling them and match pointing some, but the last couple of boards, everybody else who knew how to do it, match pointed them. And then you had to transfer the scores, then you had to add the scores up and down. Jack Garian would do like Dickie said about Dickie Freeman. He would do it just like this, write the score down. Just like this, write the score down. And they'd add them down and write the score down. And if they didn't add up, he wouldn't add them again. He would add them up and down, knowing that somebody had made a mistake,
Yeah.
either in match pointing them or transcribing the scores. Mike Fine was really good at that.
Yeah, Mike Fine was
And
good.
Jim Pexock was really,
Yes,
really good at that.
Texac was very good. Yes, I think Texac did it more than Jack did. He did it. He became our scorer.
Mhm.
Every time we had a regional, Texac was in there doing that scoring thing. He was good.
So time-wise, you're done at what? At a particular time?
We started
and
at
then,
8, so we were done at about 10:45.
okay, and then how long does this process take?
If you had 10 tables, it took at least 30 minutes or 35 minutes.
Cool.
And almost everybody would stay to the end to see how they did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the reasons we moved the game back to 7:30 and then ultimately to 7 o'clock. And then when the computers came in, the scores were done as soon as the game was over. That was amazing. You know?
So what is
Oh,
lost?
That is wonderful.
So what is lost by not having that half an hour after the game? Is there something lost?
I think you've probably noticed that most of the people, as soon as the game is over, are gone. Particularly the night games, because they don't like to drive at night anymore. That's
Yeah.
why we can't make night games work anymore.
I don't think the camaraderie is the same.
I don't think it is either.
No.
I don't think it is either. Everybody helped everybody. Everybody was friendly back then.
We had welcome suites, and we had all kinds of things at our tournaments. It was a whole different atmosphere, but it's different today. It's very different. It's very much more artificial.
We didn't have hand records.
Yeah.
If you were wanting to remember, Harry could remember every card in a deck, and a few other people could. I never could. So in order to keep people interested in bridge, you had to be friendly to them.
That's right.
Interesting.
One of the things that when Mimi and I ran the Thursday game, we would not tolerate anybody being unfriendly to the newer players.
No.
I just couldn't tolerate it because they wouldn't come back. And we used to lose players like that. People would be unintentionally unkind. When I'm playing, and I'm playing against somebody who has taken some of my lessons or something of that nature, I'll say to them, would you mind if I helped you with this? And if they say, no, I don't want to, you wouldn't.
Yep.
When Dennis played, Dennis could be a great teacher. He's a great math teacher. But at the bridge table, he was really tough on his partners. And he wanted them to learn, but they didn't want to learn everything that he could teach them. And he would try to teach them much too much. And couldn't keep clients or partners or whatever because of that. It wasn't like that back then. Everybody wanted to help everybody because they needed to keep them interested in the game.
The fact is, the game has gotten to be more difficult for a new player to enter the fray.
Yeah, because of all the different bidding and trying to keep up with everything that's going on.
It's just look at what Maxtroth and Rodwell do. Their playbook is like this.
Yep.
Every single bid that you can think of, it come up in any sequence at all, they have discussed that issue.
Rodri.
Same thing that golfers lose if they don't have a 19th hole.
Right.
I mean, that's their enjoyment of the game.
Uh-huh.
They will play golf and then play gin rummy.
And you know,
Yeah.
when they play here on Wednesdays, and Tuesday mornings, after the game, Patty and Harry and Mark Warner and 4 or 5 of the others go over to that little restaurant near Mark Warner's office, and they sit there and they go over all the hands, or they'll sit here and go over all the hands, or people will come up to it and ask them about something, and they'll take whatever time they need to help them. And
They will.
but we don't have enough people here anymore who either can or are willing to do that, or really who know enough to do it intelligently.
Yep.
So I think that's part of it. Let me talk about another thing. One of the things that Calvin did, Calvin Kibler was one of the original owners. His wife T, her job was to smoke at the bridge table and play bridge with Calvin. And for our birthday party, she would usually bake something. But she might have done the What's Trump. I don't know. We'll talk about What's Trump in a few minutes. But Calvin did all the financial records. He had charts about how many tables we had and this compared to this. Ben still uses the same forms that Calvin used for 25 years to keep the same records. Ben has much neater handwriting and does a really good job, but that was what Calvin did. But the other thing Calvin did, which was really interesting, we used to use all chem cards, the plastic chem cards in the boards,
Okay.
because they would last forever. And Calvin would make them last forever. He would wash them. He would clean, because you could clean chem cards.
Yeah, you could wipe them.
If a deck lost a card or two, he would put the deck in a drawer back there, so if another deck with the same back lost a card or two, he could stick those cards in and make those decks last forever.
Right.
And I would bet that he had decks that lasted for 10 years, 12 years. Of course, they had different shades on the back because the cards were either in the drawer or being played for a long time. But Calvin kept the cards all the time.
Cool.
Let's talk about something else. Bridge boards have really evolved. Dickie, did you know Matty and Ewell Floyd?
Yes,
I did not.
yes, I know.
Who were they?
They were early bridge players, and they were interested in the game in the kind of questions that Govan was asking about being friendly to it. They were in the same category with that lady that was introduced, ATAG. They were in that age group coming through.
I forgot about her.
They just love to play bridge.
She donated to us, and I have them over there. Govan might be able to get a picture of the whole set. A set of old whist boards, bridge boards. Have you ever seen these?
I don't think.
These are probably even before your time.
I don't think so.
These are ancient duplicate boards.
Well, the duplicate boards we originally had were wood board, but they were in this shape.
Right.
Because they were bigger.
Right.
Because they couldn't make wood.
But these were boards. They were numbered, just like boards. And I've got a whole set of them over there. Godin could probably get a picture of the whole set. And I'd never seen these played. But somebody donated. Well, the Yules donated these to the Bridge Center, and we kept them here for many, many years on the shelf over here. And then, when I started playing, they were using these metal boards. You remember the metal boards?
Yes.
They used these for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
They were fine. They were heavy. If you had to carry them somewhere, they were heavy.
Oh, Mike Farm was the best at that I know of.
Yes.
He would bring the table.
Yep.
And the boards.
Yep.
and
Everything, all at the
everything
same time.
He did.
The big problem with these is if the cards got a little sweaty or started to thicken with age, you couldn't get them in and out of the boards. Also, you could see part of the numbers when you turned them over. But these were the boards that we used when Mimi and I started playing, and probably for 30 or 40 years. Then they started using these, I don't know where this one came from. This is an old leather board.
Ooh.
This is the only one of these that I have. It was in with another set. It was big. I mean, it was much too big for the cards. They would slip in and out of there with no problem. And then plastic boards came in. These were the original plastic boards. They were smaller. Again, you can see, well, not these so much, the bottom, but they work pretty well. And now we have these nice new plastic boards, which open up. These you had to put the cards in by yourself. These were invented when they had the dealing machine, so that the dealing machine could deal the cards right into the boards. So the boards have metamorphosed. I guess that's the correct word.
Has morphed.
Have definitely morphed
Yeah.
into other things, like everything else at Bridge.
Exactly.
The computer helped us a whole lot.
Well, the computer and the scoring is a.
That was the biggest.
I think the bidding boxes, the whole changes in Bridge actually have improved the game, but they haven't, and they made it easier from that standpoint.
Yes.
The game's a lot harder to
And
play.
I'm glad you mentioned bidding boxes, because before bidding boxes,
So when was the time before bidding box? What, again, roughly, what era are we talking about?
probably 30 years.
Okay,
How long have you been playing?
only 20.
All right, probably 30 years that the bidding boxes came in.
I think so.
Because if you played before bidding boxes, you would understand this joke. What is the absolute strongest bid in Bridge? I double.
That's true. That's true.
Or the second strongest bid in Bridge was double.
That's really true.
And the takeout double was double.
They couldn't help it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
Some people just can't.
The psychology of it.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the same thing is true of the play. If they had a singleton, they'd wait a while and then play it.
Yep, yep.
I mean, there was no specific rule understanding. I'm talking about absolute rule.
Yeah,
You can't do that. You got to be in tempo.
yeah.
You know, what took you so long to play your singles? Well, I didn't have it this time. I was all. I mean,
And when they put in that rule, for years, people would call the director on every hesitation to try to get some advantage. That scared away more new bridge players than anything that ever happened.
Yeah.
Because new bridge players hesitate. They don't know. Now, Mimi is an expert at reading those things. She knows who hesitates and who doesn't, when they have something and when they don't. I've never been able to pick up that trait. Harry is very good at that.
She told me a tell about you, Bobby. And of course, she was a good gambler. She only
Right.
told me the tell after you
After-
cured the tell.
After she told me I cured it. Anytime I had to take a finesse,
Yeah.
or I would touch my head,
Yeah.
touch my head or my nose. Yeah. Terrence Reese told a story about one of his friends who was a great player, but 2 or 3 times he picked off an offsides king against this guy. And finally the guy said to him, how can you always figure out to pick up that offsides king? He says, because every time you have one, you smoke a cigarette. And he said the guy never smoked again at the pitch table after that, and it almost killed him. Reese also tells another story. He's playing against 2 little old ladies. And he said, these are ladies I don't know. And I had a 2-way finesse to take. And I didn't know which way to take it. But I had another suit where I had the queen. So I laid the jack down in that suit, and the lady hesitated precipitously. On the next play, when I played the jack of the suit that I didn't have the queen, she didn't hesitate at all. So I knew that the queen was in the other hand.
Nice.
So
So one of my favorite bridge players, of course, is Dale Dermer.
right.
And I was a new bridge player, and she was very kind. She had taken me under her wing.
Yeah.
And I was in 4 hearts, and I went down 1.
Yeah.
And it was because I could not find the queen, right? And I had a 2-way finesse, and I played the hand down. I was very proud of myself. I played the hand down, and the probability still stayed roughly 50%. Finally, there are only 13 cards, so you have to play them.
Right.
The game won't end if you don't play them.
Right.
And I guessed wrong, and I went down. So Dale, who was sitting opposite me, said, "So what happened?" And I gave her this long explanation about all the analysis I did, and and I guessed wrong. And she listened to the whole thing, and then she said, "But she hitched."
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I was so in my head, I didn't
Right.
think
Right.
about that.
Right.
Of course.
And then again, very pleasantly and calmly, she said, "What do you mean? She hitched twice." And I was like, "Oh man, I learned something today."
Go, and these are if you want to get these are the original filing with the State Corporation Commission, the original articles of incorporation.
Oh, cool.
The top page is nothing, but this is the corporation's record, where we officially became a corporation on January 18th, 1961.
Thank you.
We played at John Marshall Hotel, and I'm playing against Bill, and Bill is bragging. When the dummy comes down, he's bragging, "I know every card in the hand, you watch and see." Well, I leaned forward and said, "Bill, are you sure?" He took a peek at my hand, but I didn't show him the Queen of Spades. I didn't show him that. And he bragged, but he said, "You watch here, I'm going to take his hand right there, Dickie." And he did it, and I played the Queen and on his jack. He said, "God damn you showed me your hand." I had played against him so many. I knew him so well. We all knew each other.
Yeah.
You know? So, now let me mention something that we haven't talked about yet. Some of this you're talking about, the support of bridge and making it a game that people can play. We haven't progressed as well as I think many other efforts have in any issue you want to name. We're not beyond where we were. We would have been extinct, in my opinion, if we hadn't gotten a bridge center. But here's the thing. I really believe, if you think about it, that Bobby and Mimi have been as instrumental in the continuation of the bridge center. It would have fallen to someone who was not as interested, who wouldn't have sacrificed as much time. I told Bobby a dozen times or more, raise the price and make a little money. Well, they didn't care much about the money. They were both working. They're both well off. So
And
he
Ben
didn't
didn't
do
want to
that.
raise the price.
But I tell you, Bobby, the way Mimi is running and the help that you have given in being right about the game, not prejudiced and funny about it, I think has contributed as much to the continuation of bridge in the city as any single thing you could pick up. Far more than any other thing, because no one else was going to do it. You can't find anybody to do it. They got to have a heart for it. They got to want it to be there. They got to be interested in it. you know.
And of course, when you say that, you're taking a long view, but I can support what you're saying with my much shorter view. Even now, with this coronavirus thing going on, Mimi is working hard.
Mimi is
Oh,
a peach.
She's
I'm telling you right now.
running herself nuts trying to keep those 3 games going. The money we make doesn't even pay the taxes on the building.
Right.
But she wants to keep Bridge and Richmond alive and keep these people together.
And the thing that's amazing is I know that she didn't know anything about BBO 8 weeks ago,
Nope, we've never
and
played
now
one
she's
in her
running
life.
multiple games,
Yep,
teaching people how to
Yep.
get on BBO, you advocating for the game. So just what you said,
Yeah,
Dickie, she's doing it all over again.
Let me tell you something, it would fall flat on its face, or it would alternatively be unsatisfactory.
Yeah,
You have to learn all the rules, you have to conduct it right, or people don't enjoy it. People will vote with their feet, like
Yeah.
that. But we've maintained a considerable interest. We've had a lot more games, we do have a lot more playing than we used to have, because we only play 2 or 3 days a week.
yeah.
We play now every day, including Sunday.
of course, a lot of those are the
With
RBA
with something
games.
or other.
Yeah.
So it is advanced, but we haven't been able, bridge is too hard a game to invite a large popular movement. It's just too tough.
But Dickie, that's not right. Chess is a difficult game, and the world champion of chess is in 30.
Do you know, you remember Fisher?
Bobby
Yeah,
Fischer,
yeah, exactly. Well, I know of him. I don't know
You know who he
him.
was, right? Bobby
Yes, yes,
Fischer.
of course. Yeah, Spassky and.
Did you know I played him in chess?
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I played Bobby Fischer in chess.
And of course, you beat him.
After 6 or 7 plays, he put his hand on my table and turned it down. He said, checkmate.
Oh, really?
He knew it was absolutely unbelievable.
That's great. So, what was that experience like?
Well,
Playing
Jack
Bobby
Chappell-
Fischer at chess?
Jack Chappell was an erudite soul. You remember him, don't you? You
Okay.
remember Jack Chappell? He was the youngest life master in Richmond.
Okay.
Preston was the first.
Huh?
Preston was the first
Yes.
life master in
And
Richmond.
he was
But
just
Jack Chappell was the youngest.
Right. He was a scholar. Jack had a master's degree from Wharton. Then he came to Richmond, back to Richmond. He lived in Richmond. His father had an insurance company. He didn't have to work much. It just ran by itself. He told me that. He said, I don't have to do anything. It just runs by itself. I got a secretary that does everything. So Jack Chappell was playing. Emily Fowleen and Louise Eisman were the 2 best women players we ever had. For years, they were the 2 best players. And in one of the plays, he made a play, and Louise Eisman looked around in her hand and finally played a card. And Jack went up with the ace and fell Emily Fowleen's king.
Hmm.
And she said, God damn it, Emily. I mean, Louise, can't you play faster than that? So he was the kind of guy that he picked up on what was
Mhm.
there. He was and he went back to the University of Richmond and took a master's degree. And I used to play tennis with him and ping pong, and I used to beat him religiously. He was smaller than I was, but he couldn't play those kind of games very
Mm.
well. He just wasn't that kind of an athlete. But he was a very smart guy, and I said, Jack, what are you doing? He said, would you like to know what my thesis is? I said, yes. I didn't know whether I wanted to know or not, but he wanted to tell me, so I said yes. And he said, tobacco as a medium of exchange in early Virginia.
Hmm.
And Jack was 35 years old, had a master's degree already from Wharton, and he wanted to go back and write a thesis
Yeah.
on tobacco as a medium of exchange in early Virginia. And
Yeah.
you know, that takes a scholar. You gotta be a scholar at this point.
Yeah.
I just laughed. But he was a great player. He was a good player.
Now, a lot of people don't know, but Dwayne once opened a bridge center in competition with us.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So again, how long ago is that now?
He did what?
Opened his own bridge center. In competition with the bridge center.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly in competition because if we didn't have a game on Thursday afternoon, he would have his game on Thursday afternoon. there's a little strip shopping center on Patterson Avenue, right before you get to Parham Road, on the right-hand side going out.
Mhm.
And he opened a little bridge center in that shopping center. It lasted for about a year until he figured out that there wasn't enough people playing bridge in Richmond to
Yeah,
support
we're never
two
gonna
places.
no, he was never gonna succeed.
And of course, we almost went broke while that was happening because there's so much bridge to go around. Do you remember, what was her name? Mary and Edgar Davidson?
Yes,
They ran a couple of little games.
yeah, yes,
They ran
he did.
one over
Yes, he did.
They ran one over in Hunt Club Apartments.
He was a teacher of sorts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what he did. That was all the company, but see, that was so spread out.
Right.
Only a few people went.
Only a few people went.
It wasn't very competitive. It wasn't interesting or challenging. You know, it was just a game.
And so they lasted a little while and they faded.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the women's club game, on Fridays over at the Gitter Park, that was a wonderful game. I used to play over there when I wasn't working, if I could get away. And Dickie would play over there. And they had a really great game. They stopped for lunch. They didn't provide lunch, but they stopped for lunch. And
They had things.
Yeah.
Pick up food. You
Pick up food.
Cheese and crackers,
Yeah.
grapes and things like that.
a nice spread of little side things. And we sort of picked that game up when they finally just couldn't make it anymore.
No.
But there's always been other bridge in Richmond. The Country Club of Virginia has always had a little game. Ben directed over there, and Mark Dahl has directed over there.
Yeah.
The other country club has a ladies' game once a month, I think.
I guess so.
And you have to make reservations and you have lunch. Stanley used to run a game over here at the tennis club,
He did.
and that
And
game.
people liked to go where Stanley was.
They loved that, and they would have lunch over there, and it probably cost $15 or $20 for the bridge and the lunch, and people loved that game. So there's always been a lot of different games in Richmond, but this sort of has worked, being here. I mean, the RBA rents from us, so they can have friendly bridge, and then Paul has brought Stanley's game over here. Stanley brought Stanley's game over here and rented from us, and Paul now runs those several games to keep them going, and it's great that there's a place for them to play. Again, what we charge them, we don't make any money on that. The RBA, with what they pay us, pretty much keeps us going.
The Friendly Bridge is one of the best things we've done.
Friendly Bridge is
Wonderful.
fabulous. The McLeaves have worked with those new people and keep bringing new people in and
You
giving
know,
them lessons.
the guy who really tipped that for us was Mike.
Mike Fine.
Mike Fine tipped that
Yeah.
for us. He said, do that.
Were you here when Chuck Harrison stole all the money from the RBA?
That was before me.
All right, Chuck Harrison was the treasurer of the RBA, and he got sick, and he had some physical problems, and he had no place to go and nothing to do, and he took all the money in the RBA's treasury.
Yes, he did.
And the RBA was broke.
Yes, he did.
They charged him with criminal offense, and he died of cancer before he could come to trial. But Mike Fine, a couple of us contributed. Mike Fine took money out of his pocket and gave it to the RBA so they could stay in business.
Oh, I see.
Came to us with Linda and said, can we open a game here? And of course, we gave them the facility until they were on their feet and making money, and said, because we didn't have anybody then who could run another game. Mimi couldn't do any more than she was doing, and because she was still working. And so Linda and Bob started that game, and they have kept that game going. And they bring in a lot more players than we ever could, and it's just wonderful. We're delighted, and Linda's running a couple of online games for the 0 to the 4.99 or whatever they are, just to keep bridge going and to keep new people coming in. So all of those things.
You guys may not know this, and one of the things I hope to do is actually get a bridge podcast started.
Mhm.
And I just have my first cut of my first episode, and it's on Friendly Bridge and the work they've tried to do.
Yeah.
And they have done exceptional work. And Linda talks a lot about Mike Fine on that episode.
Yes.
because, she attributes it to his leadership and his persuasiveness.
And his willingness to do anything. He carried the tables, he did everything that a person
He really did.
possibly could do.
He really did. He did it for 8 straight years.
Yep. And would have done it for more, but somebody said it's time for somebody else to take over. Mike would have done it forever.
No, he would have. And Lynn has done something well. What's his name? What's the boy's name? Brendan Bridge.
Ed Kinlaw.
Ed Kinlaw.
Huh?
Ed Kinlaw.
Ed Kinlaw.
Yeah.
Ed Kinlaw. Ed Kinlaw has done a wonderful. He's so nice about the way he
Yeah.
does. They
Yeah.
love him.
Yeah, they do.
And in fact, Govan and Ed have done some lessons online, and they've just been terrific.
All those things have kept us alive.
Yeah, because you've got to keep new people coming in. We can't get young people to come in, so we've got to get new old people to come in and keep them coming in for long enough. But and another thing about Mike, if a bridge player, he made his living fixing those windshields.
Yeah, he fixed mine
If a bridge player
once.
would have a broken windshield and they didn't have insurance that would take care of it, Mike fixed it.
Yeah.
He never charged anybody that.
Well, he charged me.
Did he? I'm surprised. I thought he took care of everybody.
Yeah, I didn't get that memo.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, he was very kind. He did it right outside too. It would have cost me a lot more money, opportunity cost, to go somewhere and get it done. He was extremely kind.
Has the alert system always been in effect while you were playing bridge?
Yes, it has
We
been.
didn't used to have alerts.
Yeah.
We didn't have skip bids.
Yeah.
You just bid, and if people didn't know what you were doing, if they didn't look at your convention card, you were lost.
Yeah.
We've benefited from a lot of guys. Dwayne went on the circuit for a year.
When you say on the circuit,
He
you
did
meant.
nothing but play bridge.
I see. Okay.
That's all he did. He went to every tournament,
Mm-hmm.
played bridge. And I think Dwayne plays quite well. I love the way Dwayne
Dwayne
plays.
is a great
Thinks
player.
his way through the hand. But he has helped in little ways, but he teaches these people.
Yeah.
Mary Goldman and those, or whatever, not Mary, whatever her name is, Ruth, or whatever her name is,
Yeah.
and others, they need him.
Yeah.
They need
Yeah.
somebody
And of course, that's how he makes his living now.
to work with them.
And that's a terrific way to make a living, and he's worth what they pay him.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think is a common point that you were making, and has come up now several times, A, when you set up the Bridge Center, right, and started that activity, B, when Mike Fine started, Friendly Bridge, and C, when Bobby and Mimi, drove, the Bridge Center all the way through the last 30, 40 years, right?
Yes.
And now Mimi, through the coronavirus, this, along with that theme, I think that there is a question of what's the next generation going to be like, because I think we need to be talking about leadership and kind of what happens, from a leadership standpoint in bridge as well.
Well, you should be able to do it through the Richmond Bridge Association. That's your, they're your patrons. Somebody has got to be interested enough, or they've got to be interested enough, or they've got to find a way to carry the ball somewhere. Bobby and Mimi are not going to do it forever. And it's hard to find people to do it right. I mean, directing bridge, there are plenty of people who direct bridge who tend to own the game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been that problem in the ACBL a lot. They've spent a lot of time curing that problem. But you've got to find somebody. You're absolutely right. There's got to be somebody that steps forward. But I don't know that you're going to step forward while Bobby and Mimi are doing it. I mean, here's the thing. The incentive has got to be, the need has got to be on the table. It's there. It's going to be there. It's going to be there. I'm going to be gone. But somebody's got to, if the game is going to survive in Richmond, somebody's got to step
Somebody's got to
forward.
do it.
It is going to happen.
Yeah.
That the Bridge Center will close unless there is an entity that steps into the place where they have been. We had the 8 guys, they got paid off, that was the end of it. They accumulated all that over the years, and that's where they are.
And as each of them died, and as their widows died, Mimi and I and Ben have bought them out and paid them for their interest, and Mimi and I and Ben
This business is
own the
worth
building
about-
and the franchise.
This
Yeah.
business is worth about what the building is worth.
Exactly.
It's not worth anything else because there's not enough security involved in it to put up any money for it. It's too close. I mean, even if it was $10,000 a year, it wouldn't mount to anything. I mean, and they ran the game. I thought that the RBA should have an executive secretary who ran the games, all of them.
Yep.
Who ran the RBA? Who ran it? There was executive director. They had a board of directors. They did that. There'd be enough money for him to run 4 or 5 games a week. You know, for a lot of people, not for a guy who will raise a family necessarily, but it would be for somebody. But if they don't get there, and they're not willing to put up the money, it will die. You can't have bridge in the city in everybody's place.
Yeah.
And all the country clubs and all that. It gets so spread out. It's not organized. They won't even get the game straight. They won't even get the rules straight. They won't get a whole bunch of things straight. It'll be just a mess. You know, it gets to be personal.
So,
changes the
so if it was
nature
your,
of the
if it was
enterprise.
your call, what would you advise us to do?
I would ask the board if they think bridge should be continued. Are you committed to the game to continue?
Yes, absolutely. We want it to be
your-
continued.
Put yourself down now, and then if you say that, then put yourself where your mouth is. If you say that, what is the way that we can continue? The only way you're gonna be able to continue is to pay some money down with a note to Bobby and them. Maybe you can't get $100,000. I don't think you can get $100,000 on board. I tried to get them to do it, and I thought it would be simple. I didn't think we'd make any money, you understand. I thought we'd survive it.
Yep.
There was no money, that's just the same as it is today. There's no money in bridge. Bridge is not a money game. Never has been. It's too much of a challenge to be a money game. You can't get enough people. Everything else, you can get tons of people to support. So, if they want to, they've got to decide, but that problem ought to be placed on the table for discussion to absorb what the problem really is.
They need to make a plan, because, I don't know, we've lost the Kiblers and the Rattlebacks and the Griffins and the Grahams and the Garians and everybody else except Dickie, who started this place, and of course Dickie only did it to help them with the money.
When Harry started playing, some of your interests will go away. Because you can't play with Harry.
Right.
It's going to change. It's going to change for you. It's just a question of how many years it takes to change. If the league wanted to do something about it and wanted bridge to survive, and they realize that the money that everybody puts up every year is not theirs to be distributed to them, they'll never see it again unless they if they're willing to do it. You could make a 10-year plan and make a surcharge, $2, $5 a year for everybody for 400. If 350 people would pay $10 more a year
Right.
for that membership, you'd have the money.
I've got here the first 3 issues of What's Trump
Okay.
from 1962. And they really were excellent at this. Nobody's got the time to do these things then. But this was a story. They talked about all the new players who came, who won this. Maybe still does the What's Trump, and the RBA does what the RBA does. But they told stories in here, special trophy games, beginners lessons they talk about. And then, what does this say? This is the first issue of our monthly newsletter designed to bring you the latest activities on the area's bridge players as seen from the vantage point of Richmond's new $50,000 building. The West End is designed especially for your playing more comfortable and enjoyable. And then they talk about beginners lessons
great.
and future masters, the hand of the day. The second issue, the May issue, they start talking about personal things. Who won? Darrell Kennedy had a dog for company during an entire session of the Bridge Center. The pooch wasn't his partner and sat in Darrell's lap, so Mrs. K could study quietly for an exam. The prizes that they gave were amazing. The player of the month got 12 crabs from P.T. Hastings.
That's great.
Let's see. Percentage game.
We used to get free plays.
That was after the prizes they used to give, and this they weren't giving these prizes when I started 2 years later. They had the names of every new player in here and welcomed them. Script prizes, electric toothbrush. Judy Scott Church got an umbrella. Dave Rosenblum got a barbecue grill. Howard Wheel, Mrs. Howard Wheel got a Waring blender, and Lou Whitehead, oh, I remember Lou.
I remember them all.
Got a table and bench set. Ruth Meyer, the same. The Paynes got 2 new boys' bicycles. Who gave these prizes?
That's who played in the team game as Ruth.
They couldn't possibly make enough money to give prizes like that. Somebody must have donated them.
I'm sure that Vance did.
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure they did. I don't remember buying anything.
I mean, they knocked themselves out to encourage, to publicize, and like Dickie said, they would put the names of the winners every week in the newspaper.
Let me tell you something.
Hey,
That's a valuable tool to put in the newspaper if we could do it. It would be nice if we knew how to do that.
I don't think they'll do it anymore.
Well, I don't think they will, but we haven't asked them in a long time, and they do it for other people, so.
Okay.
Other sports, so why don't they do
That
local
would be
people?
pretty neat.
I don't know. You have to find out what avenues are open to you.
Yep.
That either have been closed, that those people don't remember anything. This is a whole new thing. They don't remember all that. The guys are working down there, they don't remember all that.
Right.
So you gotta get publicity. They've gotta see their name. And we gotta fix it. The game has gotta be fixed. So that it's not so complicated that only a few people can win.
Yep.
You
So-
can look here, look at all the games we play. Mark Rosenblum has won more of them than anybody I know.
Yep.
He wins them anytime he puts his mind to
And
it.
Harry,
I mean, it's just,
Harry's playing 3 times a day and winning 2 or 3 times a day online.
I mean, I'm telling you, the game is too hard for most people, for a broad range. It'll never be America's game. It's too hard. They've allowed it to get so complicated that people just can't cope with it. They can't win.
Yep.
You know, they're normal people. I mean,
And when we started playing, there were no flighted games. You either won or you didn't win.
that's helped.
But to me, that is a contradiction, because that's what Dale talked to me
That
about.
helps. That helps. That issue has helped Bridge, I think.
Hmm?
The flighted games. I think it's helped.
Yeah, but
Stratified.
therefore everybody wins.
They got to do it. You know, when Gorin came over with Bridge,
Yeah.
it was like an orchestration. You bid this, and I bid this, and this bid this. Nobody thought about interfering. Nobody thought about the sacrifices that you can make. They had to adjust the scoring even to make that feasible. They've learned a lot of things.
Yeah, until about 30 years ago, if they bid 7 no trump, if they bid 7 diamonds and you bid 7 spades, not vulnerable, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, you could go down 7 and still, if they were vulnerable, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, you could go down 11 and still get a better score.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why they changed it to 2, 5, 8, 11.
Then none of that actually helps you. Your problem in Richmond is what you see. There is no magic within your grasp to make something happen. If you owned a newspaper, you could do a lot of things if you were interested in it. They get interested in things and they write about all kinds of things. Only a certain number of people are interested in what happens even in tennis. I mean, I don't know whatever sport is. But the bridge people, they just, I claim it's different. You may think it's a money game, but it never has been a money game.
Never has been, that's right.
I asked Max Stroth, I asked him, this was probably 15 years ago, certainly 10 or 12. He came to Richmond, I asked him, I said, would you mind telling me what you get out of this? Why do you do it the way you do it?
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, in the first place, I love to play bridge. He would play bridge for probably less money, but he says, and I make a living that I like. It's easy for me. That money is enough for me to do this. He says, it'll never make me wealthy, but I'm okay with it. And he is, and that's where the game is now. But the layer up there is, the money goes away after you get through 150 players. Get 150 players that make money, but the rest of the people don't make any money.
Right.
They make sometimes some of them make a living, and they're good players. Mark Dahl's a hell of a good player.
Oh, he is.
He's a hell of a good player. If he would get on a good team, he could play with them, but he can't get there. It's closed off. You got to start early. You got to like that. You got to get along with almost anything for a long period of time.
Right.
You know, and yet you're very good. Look at
But the
Sontag.
same-
Sontag never made any money.
But Andre Agassi says the same thing about tennis, right? So if you're on the ATP tour,
They give
you're
their whole
sleeping
life
in
to
your
it, don't
car,
make- Absolutely right.
right?
There's just a few people at the top to make money.
Right.
You know.
So back to Richmond Bridge, because this is part of the reason why we want to do this, right? We talked about how the Bridge Center came about.
Yeah.
Then we talked about several of the people, who were involved in that and who played at that time and so on. And now we're talking about this next thing, which is kind of what's next for Bridge in Richmond,
Yeah.
right? And you raise the one issue, which is, Bobby looks like a young man, but he's not a young man.
That's going to change.
Yeah,
In somebody's lifetime, it's going to change. And
Right.
to make no preparation for it, if you can make it, if you can make the preparation, if you can discuss it, but you need the whole league. See that we're divided here. If there's 400 in the Richmond Bridge Association, some of them are from Fredericksburg and some of them from here now, and they don't play in Bridge.
Oh, Ming's got a plan
Complicates your
online,
life. So you've got probably a cadre of
and Linda's got a
what
plan
we would pay,
online.
300 people?
Yeah.
Is it 300?
it's more like 700 people in total, and I think Richmond is probably 600 of those people.
Is it?
Yeah.
I would think you could do it if they cared. If they don't care, you'll never get it done.
Yeah.
Somebody's gotta lead them. You gotta
Yeah.
give them cause. You gotta say, where are you gonna play? Where is anybody gonna play? Do you care about who anybody else comes?
Yeah.
Do you care about bridge?